And we're back! Welcome for another episode of Awesome Stuff Badly with me, Uncle Dr. Ernie. I'm excited to be joined by my good friend Andrew Williams, one of the team members here at the Swan Factory. And we're going to try and do some pair programming with everybody today. Can you see my desktop, Andrew?
No, I just see me right now.
Okay. Well, that's because you're on...
Okay.
You are my desktop. That should be better?
Yeah.
Can you see? Is the code readable? You want a bigger font size?
Yeah, maybe a little bigger.
How's that looking?
It looks good. I'll mute myself so you don't hear all this background noise.
Okay, great. Cool. Let's just restart. So we're using gulp as our command tool, like make or rake. And we are running our test suite. That's what we've been working on for the last few sessions. And the good news is we actually are passing all of our tests, and we're actually testing all of our code. Let me hide that window so you don't have to stare at your face more than necessary. And so what I've been doing is basically going through all of this world objects methods and making sure I've got appropriate tests. And I have one last test that I have not actually redone, which is the reset test, which combines our puts and gets to let me easily mutate a value. So let me just go ahead and finish up a test for that. That should probably go after get here. So test. This is using a testing framework called tape. Actually, I wish I have a better name for that. This is I found there's a very common idiom where you want to modify a value based on its existing value. So I was doing a get, put, get. It gets very tedious. So I created this thing called reset, although now that I look at it, the name doesn't make a lot of sense in the abstract. Should I call it add or update? Andrew, you there?
Yeah, I was looking for my unmute.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think about what to call this method here, which gets a value, adds something to it, and then puts it back in. Because I seem to need... Update? Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay. World and update properties. So got an empty test there. T.fail to make sure it's actually doing something. Awesome. And then let's say world.set x, 2, world put, and then you want t.equal world.get x 3. That should fail. And then world.date x, 1. Passes. Yay. Awesome.
Yay.
All right. So that, I think, actually finishes that branch. We finally got all of our tests for the world running. So let's go ahead and push that back up to world, branch-delete world. Oops. We out of sync here. Why am I... Does not yet merge to ref's remote's origin world, even though it's not merged to head. It is merged to head. I have no idea what that means. Let's see what GitHub client has to say. I'm just going to let that sit there for a while. Let's see, let me just rerun our, make sure that in master here, gulp main builds properly, and then run my automatic tests. And let's just flip that test a little bit before we need the console log here. And we do still have our update here. Yes. And cleanup test. Okay. Now we should create a new branch. What do we need to do next? So we've redefined all the semantics of world. We have a config file here which calls various items and then draws them. So probably the first thing to do is get our grid back up. So that's the thing that draws the basic background grid. And the naming is a little strange here. So let's actually talk about the different components. Can you unmute for a bit, Andrew, so we can chat?
Sure.
Right. So I have a main file here. Well, let's just go ahead and create a new branch here. Let's call it the grid, since that's what we want to work on next. And I've got my God object, which creates a world, which we should go ahead and start doing again. And then destroy it. It's probably going to crash because I've been mucking around with all these properties here. And what we want to do here, just okay. So drawing the world, we'll start with that. Re-enable world. So what I want to do is so the goal is that the main object really just loads things and draws them. And actually, I don't even need these things anymore because these are all being passed directly. Probably don't even need all these things necessarily. I'll have to see which ones actually are. Let's actually. Oops, sorry. Why am I not getting? Oh yeah. Let's start with just what we got here. We've got a God object, which we pass a config file, which generates a world, and then we can do things to that world. And I guess I have an index.html, which has a disclaimer there, which we can leave for now. Then we actually get rid of these here. So what I want to be able to do is something basically just like draw, like what I want to do is have all the logic have all the data describing what needs to be done in this config file, which will generate basically a dictionary of the things that we are working on.
Which config file?
The config file here, where it's config. This is config.coffee. This is the config file. And this has various child files that it draws from. And this is really, this is a somewhat different architecture than the traditional model view controller that you may be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way that I've heard it described is like data source, data transformers, and the final interface. It's probably easier if you can look at the actual grid file here. So this is an example of the grid. So the idea is, rather than writing a bunch of code, the goal is to parameterize the things I care about, the sprites, and then try to draw everything using the same basic concepts, fill, stroke, path. And then adding additional functionality and probably adding behavior as well. So we have various things that we need to draw, but it's not just drawing them, it's actually specifying their behavior. And the goal is to try and localize the information about the object in one place so that it's easier to plug things in. So I was calling these things drawings, but that's probably not a fair thing. Like the turtle, there's a lot of drawing code, but there's also the behavior, like what it means for it to go forward and for it to turn. And so really it is just the turtle file that's there. But I have a bunch of these things, and the first thing I need to decide is what to actually name these things. So the simplest thing is to just call this file config.coffee, and then I create a config directory which contains the other pieces. So that becomes something like grid equals ./config/grid. So the idea is that when you look at this source code, you see main, God, and config and render, the top level items, but then you see a config file which has config grid, config turtle, config controls. And the theory is that should make it clear the things you change in order to make it do what needs to be done. Is that making any sense? Or should I just go ahead and start doing it and see if that makes it clear?
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start.
Localize where you specify things and make changes.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and let's start cleaning up the paths here. So move.
So I have a question on your code.
Yes.
You have like the fill, stroke, and path. How were you trying to describe the behavior?
So like in the turtle here, we have our stroke here and the path here, and then the behavior of the turtle is these guys here, go and turn.
Okay.
And then each individual children can override that.
So the field, stroke, path, that seems kind of generic, but the go and turn seems kind of specific.
Right. The question is these are all the different properties that are associated with objects on the screen, the method that they support, and the so the turtle object. I think there's different ways to encapsulate things. One is to have all of your behavior, all of your business logic in one place, and all of your rendering logic in a different place. And that works well when you have one person when you're trying to develop the behavior in one place and develop the look and feel elsewhere. We're actually trying to slice things up differently here, where we're trying to define the objects and make it easy for other people to plug in new objects and specify their behavior and their appearance in one location. So that's why we're encapsulating things this way.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory would be that if we can get the game engine right, people should be able to just create their own sprites, I guess is actually the technical term, and say what it looks like and say what it does, and plug them into the game engine.
Yeah. So it looks like you're kind of giving up polymorphism.
No.
You could specify the same go or something in different objects, and then it would be different kinds of goes.
No, it's not, because they're all still dictionaries, and the semantics are defined. The polymorphic thing. It's okay. Correctly move raw star.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not following what you.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to think this through myself. So, let's see. Let me just clear up my. This is I'll leave that there for now. I may need it later. So config. And so move. I do a git move or I do a regular move? Let's do the move. Okay, so move grid.coffee. Let's just open this in a file somewhere where I can find it where I can just fix all these names. Turtles and drop here. That's what is this? That's redundant. Get rid of that. Okay, git add dot. Oops, sorry. Git add dash all dot. Okay, let's see if that does everything correctly. Yes. Name files. And start with our testing where we're back in config. So this should take. So the grid here. So the idea, it's polymorphic in the sense that these, like the path, for example, is actually a method that can either be a static string or can be a calculated value. And in fact, they usually are calculated because we're trying to do adaptive based on the size and scale of the world. So the drawing object, which is where this hopefully will start making more sense, is a thing, and I'm going to call this, so we stick with draw, let's just stick with draw. So you might want to mute now if somebody's singing in the background. So we want to let's make it draw the world. And so the idea is that I pass the world as an argument to my drawing method. The drawing method actually takes the world here, and then we'll just make svg equals world.svg. That is one of the methods there, so I don't have to keep, parenthesis. Where am I? SVG cat. Wait a second, I'm confused. Yes, there we go. So, okay, main is just doing draw And then the draw program is going to take, so when we call export draw, we define a bunch of things here. And then what we actually return is this SVG object, which then will draw things as it gets them. It takes these parameters, and in fact it just has those two there, and then it generates an SVG path based on that. And what's happening here, this is the thing what we want to do is call, actually we do have to care about what the world is. Actually, let's start and see if we can just get the draw thing to just draw nothing, just as a syntax check, since everything else is thoroughly confused. So we just have our size and our split and our dynamic property for the scale. We'll pass the grid, but we'll ignore it. And let's rebuild this thing because it's see if it's getting our syntax correct. Yes, then we launch our browser and can't find variable draw. In main, yes, we look up 19. Okay, so that's easy enough. Draw, running test and draw, and if we look in here, we should see an empty SVG element. Yes, yes, of the appropriate size. And is there a way to test that? Well, the easiest way to test it probably is just to draw it. So, do we move this timer on this? 22 minutes in. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So now we want to get our grid object. And the way this is going to work is what is our grid object then? Let's take a look at config grid. Okay, a grid object has two elements. There that are there manually. And I think what we actually want is for these to be children, if we want to iterate over them. So we need to have our children like that. Actually, no, this should be a dictionary, right? So that should be actually a colon. And are we messing with our... So far, so good. Actually, we actually save that. First of all, are we like it? No, right. So we are messed up there, as we thought it would be. Bounce around a bit here. Let's unbreak that first. And we're running the test and they're passing. Let me save that. And draw nothing. Does that properly, which is good. Now, what we want is for our grid to be Ah, right. We want to actually make all these things be our children. So that simplifies things considerably in that this will have a bunch of children, and all we need to do is draw them. And so that makes our main function considerably simpler. And world should, is it map child? Right, it'll go over the children. And send something and also get the result back if there is anything. And then it's called draw world with each of those parameters. So we don't need anything else here. There's just that one way to genericize. So as long as all the children here it gets interesting though. It wants to draw children, and what we're returning is, okay, no, we want to do one more level of indirection. Child. For each section, we want to do section section.mapChild into draw world, which is just going to be a world. We're not passing the label separately. And then world. So let's think this through a little bit more. I'm going to stop with this as a cliffhanger since I'm starting to confuse myself again and I haven't figured out how to do tests at this stage. So what I want to be doing is main calls draw. Draw goes over all the children of the world, which are sections, and those sections are going to be drawn. And maybe I should call those draw section. Oh no, that's going to be draw child. All right, so each child will have its own element there. And then we have some binding business here that we need to update, and then drawing the paths. All right. You still there, Andrew?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, yeah. So I think we're at 30 minutes here, and I've got things more or less set up. But I think I'll spend some time thinking about how to actually making it all have the right semantics. So this is probably a good point for me to break, and you have it, and I'll probably grab some lunch. And then you said you have a call in 15 minutes, or do you have another hour, or you?
No, I haven't even eaten lunch. It's almost 2 o'clock.
Yeah, so maybe we'll call it quits for today, and then we'll touch base. Either if you have some time later today, feel free to drop me a chat. Otherwise, we can pick it up again on Monday. All right?
Okay. I'm going to send you a text, but hey, a great coding session.
Okay. Hope you got something out of that, and hopefully it'll look a little bit more real next time you see it. All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Goodbye, Andrew, and goodbye to you. We'll see you next time on more Awesome Stuff Badly.